Fusco. Holland. Kamer. Lombardo. McKittrick. Malik. Neal. Amobian. Samples. Somerville.
Aye.
All members are present except for Fusco.
At this time, if you voluntarily wish to do so, please stand. And we're going to be led in prayer by Councilman Freeman. Immediately following our prayer will be led in the Pledge of Allegiance by Councilwoman Connor. The minutes from our previously held meeting have been provided. Are there any additions or corrections? We have a motion to approve. Can we get a second? All in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it.
Roll call on final passage. Baylor, Connor, Freeman, Holland, Kamer, Lombardo, McKittrick, Malik, Neal, Amobian, Samples, Somerville. The minutes pass 12-0.
Before you, you have the consent agenda to approve.
Roll on final passage. Baylor, Connor, Freeman, Holland, Kamer, Lombard, McKittrick, Malik, Neal, Amobian, Samples, Somerville, and the consent agenda passes 12-0.
We have no public hearings scheduled for this evening, so we'll move right into our old business, planning and economic development. Councilwoman Connor. Time will be granted. That actually concludes our old business. We'll now move into new legislation, planning and economic development.
Item number 0, offered by Connor, ordinance authorizing the Director of Public Service or his designee to enter into an amended and restated lease agreement with Aero Flyers Incorporated for the continued lease of the Hangar A building along with additional adjacent land at the Akron Fulton Airport and declaring an emergency.
Councilwoman Connor? This item will be placed on the consent agenda.
Item number 1, offered by ordinance authorizing the mayor or his designee to accept title and ownership of real property located at 982 South Broadway Street, Akron, Ohio, 44311, and declaring an emergency.
Councilwoman Connor? This item will be placed on the consent agenda.
Item number 2, offered by Connor, ordinance approving the donation of city-owned land on South Main Street to the Development Finance Authority for the Civic Deck at Lock 3 Park, determining said property is not needed for public use and declaring an emergency.
Councilwoman Connor? Okay, this item will also be placed on the consent agenda.
Item number 3, offered by Samples, ordinance levying special assessments for the improvement of Hampton Ridge Drive between the western terminus on Smith Road and the eastern terminus on Smith Road by paving, grading, constructing, and reconstructing curbs and driveway approaches, altogether with the necessary appurtenances, and declaring an emergency.
Councilwoman Samples?
Thank you, Madam President. We are asking for consent agenda, please.
This item will be placed on the consent agenda.
Item number 4, offered by Samples, ordinance levying special assessments for the improvement of Maslin Road between the termini of Triplet Boulevard and Pensley Avenue by paving, grading, constructing and reconstructing curbs, concrete sidewalks, driveway approaches, storm sewers, sanitary sewers, and water mains, installing roof drain pipes and planting trees, all together with the necessary appurtenances and declaring an emergency.
Councilwoman Samples.
Thank you, Madam President. Consent agenda, please.
This item will also be placed on the consent agenda.
Item number 5, offered by Samples, ordinance levying special assessments for the improvement of Forest Edge Drive, Aries Way, Carriage Hill Lane, Fox Trace Trail, High Hampton Trail, Timberline Trail, Bent Creek Trail, and Deer Ridge Run between certain termini by paving, grading, and resurfacing, all together with the necessary appurtenances and declaring an emergency.
Councilwoman Samples.
Consent, please.
This item will also be placed on the consent agenda.
Item number 6, offered by Samples, ordinance levying special assessments for the improvement of Market Street between the termini of Westgate Circle and Portage Path, North Main Street between the termini of Olive Street and East Talmadge Avenue, and North High Street between the termini of Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard and East Market Street by resurfacing and declaring an emergency.
Councilwoman Samples.
Consent.
This item will also be placed on the consent agenda.
Item number 7, offered by Samples, ordinance levying special assessments for the improvement of West Emerling Avenue between the termini of Firestone Parkway and South Main Street by paving, grading, constructing and reconstructing curbs, concrete sidewalks and driveway approaches, and installing roof drain pipes, all together with the necessary appurtenances and declaring an emergency.
Councilwoman Samples.
Consent.
This item will also be placed on the consent agenda.
Item number 8, offered by Samples, ordinance levying special assessments for the improvement of Britton Road between the termini of Talmadge Avenue and Independence Avenue by constructing and reconstructing curbs and concrete sidewalks, all together with the necessary appurtenances and declaring an emergency.
Councilwoman Samples.
Consent, please.
This item will also be placed on the consent agenda.
Item number 9, offered by Samples, ordinance levying special assessments for the improvement of Canton Road between the termini of Wedgewood Drive and the southern corporate limit and between the termini of East Market Street and State Route 76 by resurfacing and declaring an emergency.
Councilwoman Samples.
Consent.
This item will also be placed on the consent agenda.
Item number 10, offered by Samples, ordinance levying special assessments for the improvement of State Route 91 between the termini of Interstate 76 and the northern corporate limit and between the termini of East Market Street and Wedgewood Drive by resurfacing and declaring an emergency.
Councilwoman Samples.
Consent.
This item will also be placed on the consent agenda.
Item number 11, offered by Samples, ordinance levying special assessments for the improvement of certain streets between certain termini, 2020 Phase 1 Arterial Collector Program, by resurfacing such streets with asphaltic concrete 402, 404, and declaring an emergency.
Councilwoman Samples.
Consent.
This item will also be placed on the consent agenda.
Item number 12, offered by Samples, ordinance levying special assessments for the improvement of certain streets between certain termini, 2020 Phase 1 Residential Resurfacing Program, by resurfacing such streets with asphaltic concrete 402, 404, and declaring an emergency.
Councilwoman Samples.
Consent.
This item will also be placed on the consent agenda.
Item number 13, offered by Samples, ordinance levying special assessments for the improvement of certain streets between certain termini, 2020 Phase 1 Unimproved Street Resurfacing Program, by treating the surface thereof with substances designed to preserve the surface and declaring an emergency.
Councilwoman Samples.
Consent.
This item will also be placed on the consent agenda.
Item number 14, offered by Samples, ordinance determining to proceed with and levying special assessments for the improvement of certain streets in the city between certain termini by providing street cleaning services and street lighting, approving the report of the Assessment Equalization Board, and declaring an emergency.
Councilwoman Samples.
Consent.
This item will also be placed on the consent agenda.
Item number 15, offered by Samples, ordinance authorizing the Director of Public Service to submit an application for, and if awarded, enter into an agreement with the United States Department of Transportation for a Rebuilding American Infrastructure with Sustainability and Equity RAISE grant for the completion of the North Main Complete Street project and declaring an emergency.
Councilwoman Samples.
The committee's report is favorable, and we're asking for suspension of the rules.
Any objections on suspension of the rules? Seeing and hearing none, the rules have been suspended.
Nothing further.
Thank you. The rules have been suspended. The committee's report is favorable. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it.
Roll call on final passage. Baylor, Connor, Freeman, Holland, Kamer, Lombardo, McKittrick, Malik, Neal, Amobian, Samples, Somerville, and it passes 12-0. Item number 16, offered by Samples, ordinance ratifying the actions of the Director of Public Service in contracting with Liberta Construction Company for emergency repairs to a segmental block sewer on Winton Avenue, authorizing payment therefore and declaring an emergency.
Councilwoman Samples,
Consent agenda.
this item will also be placed on the consent agenda.
Item number 17, offered by Amovian, ordinance authorizing the mayor to accept and expend grant funding from the National League of Cities Equitable Economic Mobility Initiative grant in furtherance of the mayor's full-term first birthday initiative and declaring an emergency.
Councilwoman Amobian,
The committee's report is favorable, and we're asking for suspension of the rules.
any objections on suspension of the rules? Seeing and hearing none, the rules have been suspended.
This afternoon, we heard a wonderful presentation from Mrs. Tamika Rose and Shirlita. I don't know if Mrs. Rose is here or not, but it just speaks to how the program around infant mortality and the full first birthday as part of that has grown, and the excellent work they're doing. They talked a lot about doing some surveys of the women that they are servicing. And what I found and I think what we found so impressive is that they have some real numbers, like 300 last year, 200 and some this year that they've surveyed. And what they're finding is that they're looking for those gaps of how these women can be more self-sufficient. And what they're finding is that they need some work-related skills and opportunities to find jobs, get work ready, and child care services, and all of those things, and talk about how they're collaborating with agencies and organizations to help those women start thinking about their futures. And it's quite impressive, because most of us were here when we started this program, and it's really growing. So we thank them for the work that they're doing.
Thank you. Any other comments? Okay, thank you. So the rules have been suspended. The committee's report is favorable. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it.
Roll call on final passage. Baylor, Connor, Freeman, Holland, Kamer, Lombardo, McKittrick, Malik, Neal, Amovian, Samples, Somerville, and it passes 12-0.
Thank you. That concludes our new legislation for this evening. We'll now move to the portion of our meeting that we refer to as our public comment period. When you hear your name, I'm just going to ask that you please approach the podium. Please give us your full name and your address. You will have 3 minutes to speak to this body. You are reminded to keep your remarks respectful and germane to council business. Speakers should refrain from making any personal attacks. Anyone who breaches decorum will be ruled out of order and may be removed from council chambers. So at this time, if you're planning on speaking tonight at our public comment period, I'm going to ask that you please stand so that you may be sworn in by a member of our law department.
Please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the truth? If so, please answer, I do. Thank you.
Thank you. Michelle Colopy.
So yes, I am Michelle Colopy, Executive Director of Lead for Pollinators at 1624 Idlewood Avenue here in Akron, Ohio. So thank you for the opportunity to address Akron City Council. Lead for Pollinators is advocating to update 2 Akron ordinances pertaining to species and height of plants, as those ordinances are outdated, unscientific, detrimental to pollinators and birds, and not representative of our Akron community planting for nearly 30 years. You have, all of you, already received our detailed informational letter signed by nearly 50 individuals, as well as representatives of regional and national organizations, in support of modifying Ordinance 94.29 and 98.01. So I also sent you links to further explanations of the issues concerning these 2 ordinances, which I know a number of you have actually viewed. So thank you for your openness to learning more about the issue through the YouTube presentation that showed specific examples of the contradictions in these 2 ordinances. We simply seek modifications to these ordinances that will support pollinators and birds, are supported by science, reflective of over 30 years of community planting, and support biodiversity. Yellow Springs, Ohio recently developed legislation pertaining to managed yards and noxious weeds, which also would be helpful to the Akron ordinance in its modifications. In order to not repeat a proposed beekeeping ordinance of 2 years ago, I urge the law department and the city to consult with plant experts, landscape designers, beekeepers, and many of these experts who have signed our support letter. The ordinances need to define terms such as the word anchor. Plant experts state plants through their root systems are anchored to the soil, when the city may believe that anchoring an item in the Devil Strip refers only to utilizing a concrete footer. So in order to ensure reasonable modifications for the health of our community, beautiful and pollinated landscapes, the maintenance of trees pertaining to Akron's Tree City USA designation, and the health and sustainability of honeybees, native pollinators, and birds, it is important to work with landscape design business experts, seed sellers, master gardeners, bird advocates, and beekeepers to modify these two ordinances. Lead for Pollinators would be pleased to convene such an expert group in modifying the language of these ordinances. So I'd like to thank you, and I am happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you so much, Mrs. Colopy. Thank you. Nicholas Capsiopo.
Hey y'all. Good evening. My name is Nick Casiopo, 41 Marshall Avenue, Ward 1. You already know I enjoy doing the research that none of you nor any other Akron institution bothers to do. For example, you might remember when Fran and I reported that the beneficiary of a lucrative fracking bill had donated more than $20,000 to the campaigns of Mayor Horrigan, Councilman Fusco, and a few other council people, right? Yeah, that's the sort of research I love to do. Well, I was doing some digging into Akron's yearly budget reports, and I was really upset to find a glaring error under the police department's portion of the budget. Now, mind you, the APD receives 1/3 of the general fund, yet their section of the budget is so small, so uninformative, and so opaque, it'd be laughable if it wasn't such a sad and pathetic excuse for transparency. Y'all should have been provided the police budget reports for the last several years, so I'd like to draw your attention to the last page of each budget report where the calls for service are graphed. According to the 2016 budget, there were a total of 154,270 calls for service to the APD in 2015. That roughly matches what the graphs appear to show in the 2017 and 2018 budget reports. But if you look at the 2019 and 2020 budget reports, it would appear that the calls for service in 2015 were around 215,000. That's a discrepancy of nearly 60,000 calls for service. It actually appears as if yearly calls for service totals for 2014, 2015, and 2016 are also inflated by about 60,000 calls compared to previous budget reports. As a researcher, this is frustrating because it tells me the public data available is not reliable. As a citizen of Akron, this infuriates me. The only metric of performance included in the police section of the budget is calls for service, and it appears to be riddled with errors. You all and the mayor have consistently voted to increase the APD's budget by tens of millions of dollars, ostensibly based upon this single metric. Looking at the graph in the 2020 budget, it looks like excellent justification for increasing funding to the APD. Looking at the 2020 budget, it looks like an excellent justification for more police spending. It appears like increasing funding to the APD decreases calls for service. But if we go through every budget report and only look at the reported total for that year listed under the description section, we get a much different picture. In fact, according to these numbers, since 2015, despite a steadily rising police budget, calls for service in 2016, 2017, 2018, and 2019 were all higher than in 2015. That's the exact opposite of what the graph in the 2020 budget report appears to show. So at this point in time, you all, the mayor, and the police department have some serious explaining to do. How did no one catch these massive errors? Has increasing the APD budget caused a drop in calls for service? Or have calls for service risen as you continue to funnel more and more money away from our communities and into the police department? I expect a thorough explanation and some public statements within the week. I would also like accurate, verifiable data on the number of calls for service to the APD over the last decade. I'm not asking kindly, I'm demanding. Do the jobs you are hired to do. Thanks.
Pastor Gregory Harrison.
Good evening, everyone. Of course, I have to go after him, and I can't pronounce his name, and I'm going to talk about him. Wanted to share my thoughts on something. When members of Akronites for Freedom decided to protest at the homes of Mayor Horrigan, Councilwoman Margot Somerville, and Councilwoman Tara Samples, they came with bullhorns, Confederate flag, Trump flags, and even someone came in a pink gorilla suit. Their stated intent was to intimidate and harass. However, it was made clear by city officials that the group was not breaking any laws and that they were exercising their First Amendment rights. Now, Nick, the spokesperson for Serve the People, is charged with telecommunications harassment because he had the audacity to collect information about a police officer who had a questionable white supremacist tattoo. Charging him is a deliberate act to silence any future voice of dissent or any whistleblower who may come forward with information that is not favorable to the power structure narrative. When you use the weight of the governmental resources to tip the scales of justice to injustice for the purpose of curtailing speech, that questions the status quo. That is wrong. Now, when we talk about retaliation, I believe that is retaliation. And even police officers do not feel comfortable coming forward with information concerning illegal conduct of other officers because they fear retaliation. Now, this causes people to make anonymous complaints, such as the anonymous complaint to the Department of Public Safety about Deputy Mayor Charles Brown and other ranking members cheating on their leads exams. These officers made an anonymous complaint because they were afraid of that same type of retaliation. A police officer with a questionable white supremacist tattoo is a matter of public interest, and it's investigated by a police department. That right there is a matter of concern by their own police department. I don't know if the tattoo is racist or not. I don't know if it's an affiliation, but what I know is when people speak up on matters of public interest, that speech is protected. We may not like it, but it is what it is. There are organizations who track supremacist groups. If we were to silence them because we did not like what they were saying, then we all would be in trouble. I would ask the city to review those charges, and a remedy may be to have a law department that's free from governmental appointments. Thank you.
Thank you. Sharon Fan?
My name is Sharon Fan. My address is 872 Valdez Avenue, Akron, Ohio, 44320. My complaint here today, good afternoon, City Council. Good to see you all here today. My complaint today is about the gun violence that's in the people of color community. It has been dramatic. It was like in April, it was 17 people murdered. Then by July the 4th, we had 5 murders in one day. My concern is that we have low police response. They are letting our city, county jails are letting people with gun violence records out. So that's allowing them to come out and commit the same crime all over again, and the next crime is murder. It seems like our mayor is not responding to anything that's going on in the black community because we have not heard anything from them. I have people that's coming to my house asking me, what can we do, about all this gun violence? It's just me. I just had one violence walk, So I came down here to get answers from our city council to find out what is next. I did notice that on Hawkins, on the west side of Akron, on Hawkins and Copley Road, they does have surveillance cameras now, but that's in that one area. I don't know if the other cameras are actually working, but it's a problem. It's a problem, and how long are we going to just keep standing around ignoring it You know, I see on the committee, it's people of color. We got to worry about, you know, what's going on in our community. We are, you know, I'm concerned with, is it that because of all this racism that our president, our ex-president had put into the community, is starting to affect our police, our city council, our judges, our mayors. I mean, it's just starting to, you can just feel the vibe. We want to know answers. We want somebody to speak up and say, hey, what's going on? What we going to do? How can we start to fix it? We are, you know, it's getting to the point to where young black children are being murdered on the street, and they're just outside playing. You can't even allow them to play in their own front yard anymore because you never know when the gun violence is going to range. So we need your help. We need your help. We need to start to put something together. I don't care if it's neighborhood watch. How can we do? We need to go pull some out of the old hat. And the old hat back in the day, they, you know, this was addressed. And you know, even if you got to bring the feds back in, RICO Act for these gangs, it's kids that's 14, 15 years old carrying AK-47 rifles. Where are they getting this from? Are we asking these questions? I don't know. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Fan. Emery Begley?
Hello, my name is Emery Begley, and I live at 46 West Street in Ward 1. I am here tonight to discuss the issue of policing in the city of Akron, and specifically the appointment of the new police chief. I'm going to spare you more statistics because I think you've heard enough of them tonight, and instead come to you tonight as a concerned citizen, and more so as a concerned parent. You see, I am currently teaching my 16-year-old how to drive, and I am terrified. I'm terrified for the same reasons that any other parent is terrified, but more so I'm terrified because my child is deaf. And Micah gave me permission to share all of this with you, but they are also visibly queer, nonviolent, and disabled. We spent the last year working up to this, working on procedures. Keep your hands visible. Do not sign. State as clearly as possible, I am deaf. I have the legal right to an interpreter. In my house, we view disabilities as a thing of beauty, but not everybody does. And I've had to teach my child that. Police are trained to see intoxication. They are trained to see risk and malice instead of identity and beauty and disability. I've had to teach Micah that their congenital nystagmus will cause them to fail a field sobriety test, and that police will not believe them when they say it's a medical condition. I have taught them to disclose their conditions, even without an advocate, a parent, or interpreter if they feel that they are at risk. But you see, my child and I have a shield. We have a shield that Ma'Khia Bryant didn't have. We have one that Andre Hill didn't have, that Casey Goodson didn't have, that Tamir Rice didn't have, that George Floyd didn't have. We have one that all of the black people in this country that have been killed by police did not have. Because you see, my children and I are white, and in America, that is a shield. The newly appointed chief of Akron Police Department, Steve Milet, has a long history of racism, of homophobia, of ableism, and of other problematic attitudes and behaviors. He is wrong for the law enforcement career, and he is wrong for our city. I hope that you will step up and you will do what is right for our city, its marginalized citizens in our communities, and you will withdraw the offer and terminate his employment and work to find other solutions. Thank you.
Thank you, Emery. Tanya Lawrence.
Good evening, and yes, it is a good evening and a great time to be alive. And I applaud you, Madam President Margot Somerville, for your excellent job. You deserve to be there. I don't care who your father is. God put you there. And woman to woman, we gonna turn the city upside down. And I'll go with my speech, because I'm a woman, I talk too much. I'm worried and everything else. But my name is Sister Tanya Williamson Lawrence Albrecht King Jr. I was just adopted by my two bosses because they know my condition. and I had no help in 27 years, but that's all right. I was born for this. But I'm on an extended vacation from Akron Cape Market and Akron General Medical Center. First of all, I am healthy, wealthy, and rich. And our city, state, and federal government is dirt poor, functioning on a hair and a string legs. And we, the people, taxpayers, the government is a Lincoln Continental, driving around the corner on fumes. How far are they going to get? Well, the first proposal to keep money in our city is to fire our newly appointed police chief, no name, and tell him nobody, me, because they never give me a title in the church. So that's all right, I'm a nobody. Tell him nobody myself, on behalf of God, the citizens, we the people, and all the law enforcement services men of all kinds of rank. We have been and shall, we have been and shall take care of our own problems, created by outsiders this great city of Akron. Where I do, and I have 6 generations in this community, some buried in Mountain Peace. Fire the new police chief in Jesus' name. And you are obligated to represent we the people. Tear up his contract in his face. Tell him nobody said to try to sue this great city of Akron. And we, the people, the court officers, the law enforcement, the judges will see that it's tied up in court and he won't have a penny in his pants pocket. And God Almighty will make sure he doesn't have a leg to hop on. This is unfair. We've seen in the past where past presidents do the same tactic, wiles of the devil. Fire the air controllers. We see this wiles of the devil displayed with Akron General Medicine, fired licensed practical nurse without notice of service pay. This is all a message throughout the world. Loyalty, faithfulness, dedication, seniority to the area of businesses and the community is meaningless importance. We need all...
Your time is up.
Okay. Well, that's important. Fire me. In Jesus' name.
Thank you so much, Sister Lawrence. Kathy Wilkins.
Good evening. My name is Kathy Wilkins, 412 East South Street. The issue that I'm bringing today in front of you is that these after-hour bars that are in neighborhoods, I know it's not just mine, but other ones in the city, that we need to do something about them. They come in, they wake up everybody in the neighborhood, they park wherever they want to. Ours happens to be on East South Street. They call it the Sky Lounge. They don't start coming in until 2 o'clock in the morning. Now, I tended bar for over 10 years. Now, I know liquor comes off the bar at 2:30. Why would you even open a half hour before that? Then the people stay until 5 or 6 o'clock in the morning. Most people I know between 4 and 6 in the morning, they're either sleeping or they're getting ready to go to work or coming home from work. They're not out partying in the middle of the street. Now, we have like I say, all these people coming in. We've got gunshots. It's been, well, since about the end or middle to the end of March since all this has been happening. Every Friday and Saturday night, come 2 o'clock, it's like a choo-choo train. The cars just start coming in. They park wherever they want to, blocking driveways, loud. The music's loud. They just get out of their cars and urinate wherever they want to. I mean, they have no pride whatsoever. You know, then people would be standing right there and they just drop their drawers and do their thing. Now that's stretches things a bit, but we've got like I said, this is every Friday and Saturday night, sometimes Thursday nights, and they leave their trash, broken bottles every place. We got liquor bottles everywhere. Like I said, the music's going loud. They're speeding up and down the street with their loud cars. They've got doing 360s in the middle of the intersection to the point where there's so much smoke you can't even see. They blocked the South Street. Traffic can't even get through. Granted, there's not that much usually, but we've got the mail trucks coming through. They actually were blocking the road last weekend to where the mail trucks couldn't get through. And it was over 10 minutes before they could. We've got shots fired all the time, and we've got people that's got holes in their cars, they've got holes in their house. The one gentleman is on oxygen, and last weekend, it just missed his oxygen tanks in his house by like an inch. You know, we shouldn't have to put up with all of this, and it's every weekend. The people aren't like from here, like it's a neighborhood bar or anything. They're from Canton, you know, and it just brings everybody through. I mean, yeah, we all did things when we were kids, but come on, 2 o'clock in the morning, just hoping that we can all work together and get this solved. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mrs. Wilkins. John Wesley Sharp.
John Wesley Sharp, attorney and counselor at law, 730 Callis Drive, apartment 1201, Akron, Ohio, 44311. I'm chairman of the Coalition for a Safe Community. We are a grassroots, on-the-ground organization. We support and assist the victims of discrimination and racism and their families and confront the perpetrators. We invite victims of discrimination and racism to our meetings. As such, we have had to confront Sheriff Drew Alexander, Chief Matulovich, and others. We held a large meeting of municipal and common pleas court judges. We come to City Council to bring up various issues. We marched on City Council when Jeffrey Stevenson was shot 22 times. Our board put out this statement, Coalition for a Safe Community. Our criminal justice system is broken and cannot be fixed. Racism is a disease and the whole legal system is infected. Discrimination starts when the dispatcher says black male. First, too many cars show up, too many police using excessive force. This forms diminished responsibility like a mob. For example, in 1990, police piled on and suffocated an unarmed Armstead land. In 2008, Summit County deputies killed and sexually abused an inmate. Shortly thereafter, a 19-year-old young man named DeJohnette was observed by Akron police to swallow a lot of crack. When he was booked into the Summit County Jail, he was denied medical treatment and died. When Demetrius Vinson was killed by Akron police, claimed it was suicide. 2 Akron police captains were present at the autopsy and refused to give the coroner the bullets. In 2008, Akron police shot an unarmed Jeffrey Stevens 21 times. Akron police shot an unarmed Elijah K. this past February. Now this infection that starts with the dispatcher spreads to the police, prosecutor, judge, jury, jail, and probation. The police should be out preventing child abuse, enforcing restraining orders, and solving black-on-black crime. We need to get out of the books. Black history is now. Black men are under attack now. We are marginalized, oppressed, degenerated in news, entertainment, and advertising. We as black men were denied jobs during Akron's recent construction. We want to explore whether the state and the city have observed the EEO clauses in their contracts, because we don't see many of us on the streets. Prejudice, discrimination, and racism keep us up at night. We feel a personal responsibility. Now, we wanted the word to go out. We want to talk to the relatives, friends, and associates of people who have been killed by the Akron police. We think they should be recognized. Look, there'll soon be another police murder in Akron. And we're going to scramble around like somebody doing something at the last minute. But you need to do something now.
Your time is up.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sharp. Ronald Smith.
Ronald Smith, 1279 Herman Street, Akron, Ohio, 44307. It's good to be back here, folks. I'm glad we kind of got through this pandemic a little bit. And it's good to see all of you. To some of the new members down here, we welcome you aboard. Madam President, members of council, members of the mayor's cabinet. I ask one thing. Just do your jobs. Now, it's fitting that I'm down here today. I wanted to come anyway just to do this, but it's fitting that this afternoon I had a visitor come to see me. I've been knowing him a long time, and he took me back in time. Ironically, he took me back to, guess what, 1968. Showed me a picture. In that picture, I don't know for sure, I'm gonna look again, but I think I might have been in that picture. Then when I hear the folks talking here today, it all seems to come together, and I begin to connect these dots as I'm standing before you. Right before the pandemic, there were some studies done. You guys all know it. Y'all know the drill. You know the truth. There has to be black inclusion into our economic workforce. You have to include them. Pure point blank. You have to do that. And it's more than just food for thought. You have to do that. You guys are leaders. You have to do your job. Now, to answer that young lady's question, just to give her kind of in a nutshell, the antidote to killing is gainful employment. When you have economic empowerment and you can go to the store to buy stuff, you don't think about doing something wrong, mostly. Now, as far as killing, everybody kills. Every ethnicity kills, okay? It just seems that African Americans do it more, but then again, they've been excluded from the economic workforce. That's not an excuse I'm offering, but it's a fact. It's the truth. Now, I'm going to be brief because I'm going to save some of this for next time. I don't want to give it all to you right now. But let me leave you with this food for thought that I got from down here about 4 years ago. And it goes like this, and I quote, "You folks out there, if you don't think we're doing our jobs as councilmen, then you vote us out." Voter suppression, what is that about? Vote. The most fundamental thing that we got, the most fundamental right that we got, absolutely, is the right to vote. I got a lot of love for you guys, and we can help you. Do your jobs. And keep in mind voter suppression, but also keep in mind you got to come back up for re-election. Please don't misunderstand what we're saying to you. Please don't. Please don't take us for granted. Got a lot of love for you.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Reverend Pinckney.
Speak to my heart, Holy Spirit. Give me the words that will bring new life. On the wings of the morning, the dark clouds will fade away. Speak to my heart. That's my prayer this evening. And I am Reverend Pamela M. Pinckney. And I'm glad that you opened up with prayer, and I received that prayer. And I thank you for that. And I'll be glad when we get to the point when people are not afraid to pray in the name of Jesus Christ, which I greet you in that name right now.
Thank you so much. Reverend Pinckney, if you could please give us your address for the record.
I choose not to give my confidential, because I am a preacher. I don't give my address out, and because of what I do. And until we get some modification on safety issues pertaining to the police and the police violence, I will not give out my address publicly. Because there are police officers who are not peace officers that don't like preachers. I came this evening, and that's no disrespect to you. As a matter of fact, I wanted to just applaud you two ladies because you're doing something new, and so am I. I'm a licensed ordained apostolate, which I address and deal with order and disorder, and I received some information recently. There was an article in the Akron Beacon Journal about a man by the name of Jeremiah Caldwell. A construction company came through the neighborhood, and someone had put some information out that someone was just looking at the sewers in that community. Well, that was not quite the truth, because Jeremiah Caldwell is now fully incapacitated in a nursing home because not only was the dishonesty of the sewer being looked at a difficulty, but this construction company, who was still gainfully employed, did something that caved in the basement of his home. And this home is in an atrocious condition. And this article was written in 2018. It was October the 17th and 18th. And here's a copy of what it looks like, for anybody who'd like to see. Well, now, the man has suffered from massive strokes and heart attacks, and he's very incapacitated. But no monetary compensation or any support has taken place for this family. As a matter of fact, when some tried to offer him, $10,000, $15,000 for such an atrocity,
Reverend, your time
he
is
denied it, and now he's incapacitated. Something's wrong here. So we need to not pray, we need to pray and stop making pledges to inanimate objects and make the promises to the people come true. Thank you.
Thank you, Reverend Pickney. Harrington Hargrove.
Good evening, Council. My name is Harrington Hargrove. I live at 1008 Laurel Avenue, Akron, Ohio, 44307, Ward 3. And I'm here in reference to the American Recovery Act. I would like to know who will distribute these fundings and how do we apply for them. I would like the city of Akron to make a commitment to the black community for a 5-year plan that would elevate our communities. The American Recovery Act is to be used to uplift all the communities. So this council should start with the communities that has been redlined. I'm asking this council to ride through the black community in Ward 3 and to see how the devastation of our community has been done through urban removal. I thank you for your time, Council, and please, let's make a plan to have a redevelopment in our communities. Thank you very much. Bye.
Thank you so much, Mr. Hargrove. Cindy Lawler Owens.
Good afternoon. My name is Cindy Lawler Owens. I'm glad to be at home. I'm just making a joke. I live at 1823 Manchester Road. I have a business at 1833 Manchester Road. I've been blessed to live right next door to my business. And the reason why I'm here today is because I've been operating a business basically by myself, helping out the community. I've had a lot of racial mess going on way in the past. I left that alone. I'm still here. And I'm still helping out people. And my place is still being vandalized. My place is still being broken into, you know, so many times that basically it's even hard to even keep up with the door keys. The reason why I'm here today is I'm trying to see if there are any available funds that could help me with my business. I have yard sales, fundraisers, and when I do this is taking a lot of me. And what I mean is I stay up a lot of hours. Like, for instance, now I just came in from the rain. I'll be out there by myself sometime. And I know that there's grants and stuff that is available, but I didn't apply for any of this stuff because I thought it was fraud. And then just to witness like different businesses going up, and then 2 months later there's no business, and then witness different people that don't have business getting this type of money. I thought it was fraud. I didn't apply for any. Right now, I'm just trying to see if the city council or someone in the city can help me get some funds, you know, probably until I apply for this grant money and stuff, because basically, I think I deserve it, you know, because helping out so many people and, you know, like the city sometimes complain because I have stuff out. Well, the thing about it is when I have stuff out, okay, basically I'm putting it out by myself, and it's a lot of hard work. But when you have other businesses that have cars and stuff, or they simple, when you have other businesses that have, or houses that have, that's been terrorized, and they living in these, what I'm trying to say. All I'm saying is, you have houses in my area, you have businesses in my area, you have streets, you have different roads and stuff that's in my area, and it's totally destroyed, and they live like this, and the city never bothers them, but they always come at me, seem like, because I'm selling things, you know, or I'm having funds or something. So I'm just asking the city if they could help me at this time.
Thank you so much, Mrs. Owens. I'm sure there's someone that'll talk with you after the meeting, okay? This concludes our public comment period for this evening. I want to thank all of those who have participated. We're going to move into our committee assignments, rules. Councilman Freeman. 2:30. Public Safety, Councilman Kamer. 2:15. Budget and Finance, Councilman Freeman. 3 p.m. Parks and Rec, Councilman Neal. 1:45. Planning and Economic Development, Councilman Kamer. Housing and Neighborhood Assistance, Councilwoman Holland. I'll be 3:30. Public Service, Councilwoman Samples. Health and Social Services, Councilwoman Amobian. Public Utilities and Green Committee, Councilman Freeman. 45. Thank you. Is there anything else coming before council at this time? Councilman Neal?
Thank you, Madam President. I just want to thank everybody that came down to share information. I think I speak for most of my colleagues when I say I don't take it as criticism. I appreciate what's been shared. I would like to get, there were some strong statements made, and I know we give information to specific departments or specific people, but because of some of the statements that were made, I'd like for if we, as since they were made publicly, if collectively as council we could get the information regarding Brother Nick's comment about the police calls and since they were made public, the accusations about the new police chief. If there's anything that's concrete, I mean, those were serious accusations. I'd like for us to get those. And I appreciate, I'm wondering if this Mr. Caldwell is the one that is over there on, off of Calga. Yeah, and that's been a while. If we could get an update on that, not just him, but everybody that lives on that street, collectively as a council, if we could get an update, please. And then this right here, you know, this world is moving so fast. I think we need to consult with our corporate sector. I know some of this may be state related, but I know you all have seen the Domino's commercial where autonomous delivery is going to be coming, autonomous cars. We've talked about drones. And there's other technology that's coming along that really government is behind. We don't have any legislation for anything like this. I love seeing people on the little scooters, but I hate when I have to get out my car and move them out the center of the street. I hate when somebody leaves it at the end of my driveway. So we've got to put policy in place for some of this stuff. So, again, I appreciate the citizens coming down. I think we may need some of their help in creating some of this policy, but we know it's coming. We talked about, it's not just reimagining public safety, it's reimagining governance, period. And let's use those who may have greater resources. Because folks, as council, we don't have a staff to do research. That's no excuse, but we don't. I talked to some of my colleagues. We're not like Cleveland, where they are able to hire staff for their individual council people, and they have a budget that they can work with. So I appreciate your help when you bring this kind of information to us, but I just want to check and verify now. And I think the rest of my colleagues feel the same way. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you so much, Councilman Neal. Is there anything else coming before council at this time? If not, can we have a motion for adjournment? Is there a second? If there are no objections, we're adjourned.
This concludes the live broadcast of Akron City Council. Margot Somerville, President of Council, presiding.